In this prison, there are 10 people per square meter. Here, men were subjected to a particular form of abuse. I have gathered for you the most brutal prisons, renowned for their insane treatment of inmates and harsh punishments among the prisoners themselves. And finally, I will show you a terrifying camp where, for the sake of experimentation, people could sew each other. La Sabineta, a prison that stands out even among the most terrifying places of confinement. It was intended for only 700 people, but there were more than 4,000 at a time. With a staff shortage, the ratio of 1 guard to every 150 inmates poses a significant challenge in ensuring oversight. Entrusting control to local authorities who punish their own inmates in highly extravagant ways. What kind? Abuse against male inmates is just the tip of the iceberg. Living conditions are appalling. No proper toilets. People resort to using bags to relieve themselves, wash from a single bucket, and the drinking water is merely named as such. Violence, including rape and murder, is a commonplace part of life here. Most inmates sleep in hammocks hung in corridors, or even on the roof. Only gang leaders can afford better conditions due to their influence, and they alone dispense justice. But even this prison would seem like a child's camp compared to the next one. The Tadmur prison in Syria is notorious for its cruelty and inhumane treatment of inmates, making it one of the most infamous prisons worldwide. What happened there? Take, for example, the shocking incident that occurred on June 27, 1980, when, in response to an assassination attempt on Syrian President Hafez al-Assad, soldiers killed around 500 prisoners as a deterrent to criminals. Since then, the prison has housed thousands of both criminal and political inmates, with the regime in Tadmur being the harshest. Prisoners were regularly subjected to torture, often resulting in death. Interrogations were accompanied by beatings with metal pipes, cables, whips, and boards. Sometimes inmates were drugged or beaten to death with axes, and the bodies were piled in a special courtyard inside the prison, yet nobody complained, because people hardly ever left there. Once, prisoners attempted to unite against the violence, but their efforts were brutally suppressed. They were simply all shot, as there is no place for protests here. In 2001, after numerous accusations of torture, the prison was closed, but in 2011, after 10 years, it reopened. Observers are not allowed there, although authorities claim to monitor what happens within the walls. Interestingly, within the prison, there are opponents of the regime and military criminals who, on the contrary, support the political system, leading to real clashes. The guards turn a blind eye to this. The fewer people, the more oxygen. Syrian poet Faraj Bayraktar, who spent 5 years there, described the Tadmur prison as a kingdom of death and madness. But even this savage place will not be the worst on my list. The Carandiru prison, located near Sao Paulo, closed in 2002, but its reputation as the most brutal prison in the world remains unshaken. Founded in 1920, it went 80 years without major renovations. Housed in a grim building made of brick and concrete with appalling living conditions and a lack of basic sanitation. But believe me, the dilapidation is not the worst part within these walls. Life here was unbearable, and only those who survived it can fully describe the horrors of Carandiru. The prison population fluctuated between 7,500 and 10,000 inmates, with fewer than 1,000 staff members working in shifts. As a result, at any given time, there were no more than 250 supervisors, leaving the inmates virtually unsupervised and leading to a rise in drug violence and debauchery. 1 in 5 prisoners was infected with HIV, and medical care was so limited that many died from simple diseases or injuries, or simply committed suicide. Local leaders didn't even attempt to escape. They ran their own insane domain within the prison, controlling the other inmates. Prison hospitals often ignored anesthesia, and due to the filth, surviving a serious illness was nearly impossible. Furthermore, Carandiru became the site of the bloodiest prison riot in Brazilian history in 1992, starting with a fight between inmates from rival factions and escalating into a full-scale uprising. The suppression of the riot by guards and police resulted in the deaths of 111 inmates, marking one of the most tragic episodes in the history of the Brazilian prison system. And I want to remind those who remain unsubscribed: without facts, you are left behind. The Goldani prison in Georgia was once a place where torture was commonplace. On September 18, 2012, national television channels in Georgia aired footage containing recordings of rape, torture, and beatings of inmates by prison staff. The broadcast sparked protests around the world, organized by students and citizens of Georgia. Orders were issued for the judicial prosecution and condemnation of guards guilty of torture and human rights violations. The government also declared a zero-tolerance policy towards human rights violations. But do you think anything has changed? Of course, I must tell you about the Black Dolphin prison located in Russia. This strict prison houses the most dangerous individuals in the country, including those who have committed truly horrendous crimes. Their cells are always brightly lit, and the guards monitor them around the clock. When inmates are escorted out, they are always accompanied by guards and dogs. The cells are cramped, only 4.5 meters in size, and it feels like being in a cage within another cage because metal bars separate them from the windows and doors. The day in this facility starts early, at 6 o'clock a.m., and inmates are not allowed to sit or lie on their bunks for the next 16 hours. As they move between buildings, their eyes are blindfolded to prevent them from memorizing the layout of the premises. They are always accompanied by a minimum of 3 staff members, including one with a guard dog. Every 15 minutes, the guards check the cells. Such strict precautions ensure that escaping from the Black Dolphin is impossible, as evidenced by the history of the colony where no one has managed to escape. The name Black Dolphin was given to the colony due to the dolphin figurines made by the inmates themselves. It is one of the darkest places in Russia, but not the bleakest. I will tell you about an even harsher place shortly. In Bangkok, there is a prison nicknamed Bangkok Hilton, after it was described as such in an Australian TV series where Nicole Kidman played a role. However, Thais call it the Big Tiger because it literally devours its prisoners. It houses people sentenced to death or longer terms. Conditions are extremely harsh. Torture, cramped cells where there can be over 25 people, and they eat only once a day. Inmates have to buy food with money from their relatives. Due to overcrowding and poor conditions, diseases like cholera and malaria are widespread, with 5 to 10 people per square meter. There's no need to talk about toilets or showers, let alone preserving human dignity. Essentially, it's a cage where people are turned into real beasts. And I kindly ask you to subscribe to my channel, give it a thumbs up, and until we meet again, friends.